about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my real top niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day pepping America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclose with it, close out the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit bitch, if not better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas and get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bunch of great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at ya, I own every gold mine in South Africa, thanks baby you made me a billion, plus I own a building, but each one of my children's children.
And we are live. Welcome to Voice of Rebellion Radio. This is your host, Chris J. And tonight we are talking about Russia and right now what seems to be this massive conspiracy that we are involved in with the media. And right now the propaganda has been put at a very high level against the Russian government and Vladimir Putin. And we're going to talk about, that this is a very serious threat to them, and they've done this in Ukraine. They've done this in Georgia, color revolutions, and Soros and some of the other top elites have been, in the Rothschilds. They've organized these events, these events that are not original. They look like a grassroots protest, but what they actually are artificially spawned protests and riots as we saw in Ukraine, and really what resulted in a coup. And it seems to be in all these things that have been thrown out by the CIA, potentially everything from assassinations to assassination of Putin to all sabotage inside the country to even potentially sparking some kind of color revolution. And by the way, I have Michael from Primer Time will be joining me here in a second. About to add him into the conversation. And hey, Michael, you there? Be back in a second. Well, anyways, is that right now we have a lot of hate in the media against Russia, as you see. Obviously, right now they're talking that they hacked the elections, which seems it's a hilarious claim because what it is saying is that the elections actually are something that they want to hack, but ultimately it's a rigged election in the first place. And there's all this talk that apparently that Putin installed Trump into the presidency, but the truth is that Putin did not install Trump, and I don't even think that he would have the willingness to want to install Trump, because Trump is ultimately what appears as another neocon. When you get down to the brass tacks about it, or surround themselves as a completely neocon cabinet, and he acts what is rhetoric when it comes to foreign policy. Iran, Syria seems to be practically the same as the policy as before, and with the same results and the same. For the same results, these events are going to, with the Trump presidency, are going to go the same way as if it would have been a Hillary presidency. Unfortunately, Trump is he's just another establishment puppet. And I don't see it going any different, his presidency, than Obama's or Bush's and any of the previous recent presidents in their stance with Russia. he says that he's going to change the stance with Russia. He says that he's going to improve relations. However, I really do question that when he has all these people around him that, for example, is Tillerson his hey, Michael, you there? Says I added you.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Hey, we got Michael in the conversation now, but I want to hear your take on the Trump. And do you really think that with all the people that has been surrounded, they've surrounded by him? You got Tillerson, you got all these other neocons, and sort of really no one that's actually anti-establishment. Like he said, he was going to drain the swamp, and it seems like he just refilled the swamp. How is the position with Russia going to change? It's not going to happen.
I think I got a different view on what Trump is doing with his cabinet picks. All right, you got to kind of like take a look at each one of them. So like, if you can bring up like a little graphic or something that shows all his picks, I can go through a couple of them, and it kind of illustrates what I'm looking at as the way I see things falling down here in the very near future. So let's just take right off the two generals he picked, right? These are generals that were not appreciated by the previous regime, right? These were guys that were kind of what you could call real heroes, real service members, and they didn't like the way that the last administration, the Obama administration, had been taking certain. Let's just go with we'll just give something straight up like the gays in the military thing. They didn't really like that. They don't like the way that the wars are fought. And these guys were outspoken by it, and they're very well respected by the troops. So he's got those guys on his team. And then let's look at his pick for Secretary of Labor, right? I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the CEO of Hardee's and Carl's Jr. All right, so there's the transition to the service economy. All right. The Secretary of Education is the heir to the Amway fortune, and Amway is that pyramid scam that sells soap. And she's married to the founder of the Blackwater Mercenary Group. So I find that to be fairly interesting too, if you really kind of like think about those two job prospects or those two backgrounds compared to like education. Juxtapose that with education. It kind of gives like a message like you can either like go into sales or you can go into like the military somehow. Like, and that kind of fits in with the guy who's the CEO of Hardee's and Carl's Jr. Then let's see, there's a couple more picks that just really Vince McMahon's wife is head of the Small Business Administration. McMahon's wife, I mean, like business administration.
That right? Wasn't she the CEO of the WWE?
Yeah, I think she was a CEO. She's something like that. But I mean, I find it really odd that somebody with it feeds into the whole idea that this is a show, that this is just a great big scam, and that we're getting like set up for the great big spanking coming on.
Well, I saw that one of the people that he picked, Tillerson, of course, Tillerson. Wasn't he ran ExxonMobil, which he had been involved with. One of the things that he'd been involved in was sabotage against the Venezuelan government, heavy, I guess, around the time of the coup. I'm guessing that's when the oil companies got real pissed off at Chavez. That's the thing, is that perhaps the Trump strategy is not going to be at first to go after Russia itself, like how Obama has, especially in the last few weeks. That's actually kind of scary,
But that's the neocon. That's the neocon point of view, and honestly, the war with Russia right now, I think that's to cover up a lot of bigger things. It has nothing to do with Russia. We don't have any kind of real fight with Russia. Everything that we've had going on, with the new red menace, like they're kind of pushing it on TV, has been something that we've started. I think the biggest thing would be Syria and oil prices.
Well, yeah, and that's also interesting about Trump is that the fact that he's talked about that he doesn't want to fund the rebels anymore appears, which makes me think that possibly that they might be going from a different approach. Is that okay? We're no longer going to have the proxies do it. We're going to go in there and do it ourselves. That's what my take has been on this. Is that that's the way they're probably going to go, or that because I don't think that they're going to give up and just let Assad run the country. The Council of Foreign Relations will never allow it. So they're going to go into Syria's going to be the Syrian government's going to be taken down either by the rebels, which has been a failed project, and I think they knew from the very early on that it probably wouldn't work, and that ultimately it would lead to invasion, or they're just going to go in there with a full invasion, 100,000 plus soldiers at some point. Especially when I see this propaganda recently about Aleppo and people saying
that's the big thing right there. It's all propaganda. It's all propaganda about Syria. Every bit of it is whatever we get and we're told by our media about Syria is faked.
Well, yeah, for example, is that they talk about this apparent slaughter that's about to happen with the Assad regime and the citizens of Aleppo. But the truth is that the citizens are pretty much being evacuated out of the city right now. The people that are going to be left behind are the terrorists that have decided not to surrender. They're giving them a chance to leave right now. But if they don't give up, they're going to go in there and bomb the shit out of probably whatever terrorists are left in the city. The rebels are... they're trying to cling on to that city for dear life because they've been in charge of that city since 2012, and now they're about to lose, and that's a major loss because now the government will be in charge of Damascus and Aleppo, the two biggest cities inside of Syria. And what's next is that potentially the Syrian government might be able to make a run at Raqqa, which is right now the ISIS command center, not just for Syria, but for Iraq and the entire Middle Eastern, the ISIS commands in general. That's the so-called capital of the ISIS regime.
But ISIS is bullshit, right? ISIS is really just some sort of CIA Mossad creation. I mean, every one of those resupply missions.
Essentially, it's like it's a non-state group that the United States has created. It's and in a way they claim themselves to be pretty much a country. But yeah, they're completely 100% created by the United States and Israel. In fact, I mean, if you look at an alternative name for Mossad, it comes out to be Israeli Secret Intelligence Services, coincidentally ISIS.
I don't think we're allowed to talk about that.
It's the truth, though. And if you look at it, if you look at ISIS, also another thing about ISIS is that you wonder, okay, it's not really an Islamic tradition or anything to be wearing, cover completely your body up and where they wear all black where you can't really see any features. Why is that? Because a lot of them are they don't even look Arab because they're not Arab. A lot of them are Israeli, European, American, and the ISIS has so many foreign elements to it. And
if you really start looking at it, we go back to like how Gaddafi was taken down. And all the stuff that happened in Libya. Well, there were several videos of, the last few moments of Gaddafi before, he got knifed in the booty and took a bullet in the head that showed Western, and I'm not going to say United States or British or French troops, but they were Western troops in American-style uniforms that were light-skinned to the point of where they were turning pink in the sun. Like a sunburn. So these are not guys that are from that area that were on scene when Gaddafi was getting killed. We've been playing this game for a good long time. And I really think like this is the end game now that I think they want to start. I think they want to pick a fight with Russia to like take away from the fact that like the pedophile thing is like exploding.
I think, right now the media is putting a lot of course, they're not covering any of that stuff that's going on, those accusations that came out about the Clintons and the Podestas and all them. I think it's also, I think that legitimately, though, the United States government is seeking regime change inside of Syria. the Russia thing's fronting, because I can tell you is that a lot of military experts do say that the United States doesn't really have much of a chance in a fight against Russia, partially just because of the fact that they're superiorly trained. They're trained from a very early age there.
I would take. I think that if we were to fight, if the United States military was to fight the Soviet, or they shouldn't call them the Soviet Union, was to fight Russia right now, it would be very, very bad for the United States, but we would win. And we would win ugly. And that's not necessarily the path they want to go down, I don't think. I don't think that a real fight with Russia is really what they want.
Well,
I don't think they want a real fight with anybody. I think they just want a war that goes on and on and on, so it has to be resupplied and repaid for and refinanced and I mean, seriously, none of this shit happens unless somebody signs the note on the loan that says you can now build, a bunch of 500-pound bombs. None of this goes anywhere until the banker puts his stamp on it.
Yeah, of course they want a long, continuing war. They don't fight wars in, a few days. Like, of course, the goals that they put out are lies, about going into Iraq when they said, oh, we're doing this to take out Saddam, and you see how long they've been still in Iraq to this day. And it's like that was something that could have been literally done in days if they were actually, that was legitimately the goal. That was the only thing they were trying to do. But it's a business. And
yeah, but I mean, you have to look at what happened. What did Saddam do right before we went in again in 2003? Not in 91 when we went in there and screwed around. There was a whole bunch of mess about that too. But what did Saddam do in early 2003, right before we went in? He said he was no longer going to sell oil for dollars. He wanted euros, renminbi, or gold. And we went in there and told him no. And guess what? We did the same thing to Gaddafi, right? He wanted to make the Pan-African dinar a gold coin that was going to circulate. Nope, I'm sorry, no. No,
that wasn't happening. And he was going to make it for the continent.
And honestly, look what happened. Let's go to something that's kind of like in your more of a purview of interest for you, but like Venezuela. Chavez was sitting on a whole bunch of gold, and the minute he said that he wanted his gold repatriated, he wanted it out of New York and London, and he wanted it back in Caracas, he got cancer.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality. And Chavez, but they were officially, I know they were successful in repatriating the gold.
Yeah, but they've lost it. But it's all gone now. It's all gone. They got it back, and what happened when they got it back? This whole great big currency crisis that they're having. It's gone. All their gold is gone.
I don't know. Actually, I mean, I can imagine it could be possible they've sold some of it off. But right now I try to. It's hard to discern what is propaganda, what's not propaganda coming out of there, because it seems like every day there's a different propaganda story coming out of there about something catastrophic happening. And I talk to my Venezuelan friends, and things are rough, but it's definitely not what they're trying to make it seem like it's an apocalypse happening there and the country's near collapse. That's not true. But they would love to make it seem like that on the media, and if they can possibly put the idea in Americans' heads that there's some kind of a humanitarian crisis going on there where people are, starving and all that 9 yards. They could potentially say, "Oh, Maduro's starving his people. We now need to authorize 5,000 troops going to Venezuela, or even a larger scale, 75,000. Who knows?" Because I see the Iraq and Afghanistan thing right now. They are running out of. They're kind of running out of business in a way, because they're going to put a few thousand here and there, but they're looking for another large-scale thing to get into. Is what I'm seeing. Is that probably Syria is certainly going to be
the only thing that makes money, and it's the only way they can actually continue to hold on to the power is if they keep these stupid, endless, pointless wars going on, because, well, that's what makes money, man. I mean, look, what do we make in the United States? We make like mobile homes. We make guns and bombs. We make half of a car, and we make rap music, but the rap music is printed on a Chinese CD. So yeah, we got to go with what makes the money, and it's the war.
Well, yeah, the war machine makes a ton of money, and the United States government spends $1.3 trillion a year. Actually, I think it's $1.7 trillion a year on their defense budget. And you see all the money that goes to all these subcontractors here and there. That, you know, that missile that you see being launched on TV is $1.4 million. You know, this gun over there, you know, the subcontractor makes who knows what off of each gun, $5,000 off of each gun. Everything's high priced. And then who pays the bill in the end? Us, the taxpayers, because the government just sends the bill to us in the long run. So it's a huge business. It's endless business over in the Middle East. Is that now they've gotten themselves into where they'll be picking a different country every few years to, you know, next will be Syria, and then eventually I think Syria and Iran are going to coincide very quickly, and that's.
Well, didn't General Wesley Clark give a little speech about the seven countries we're going to knock off? And it's just kind of funny that those 7 countries getting knocked off also happen to fit into the plan, the Greater Israel plan, you know. And to be honest with you, not one of them countries has any kind of effect on the United States. Not a one of them's a threat to any part of our way of life.
Well, none of those countries have any kind of. Despite the propaganda, even Iran does not have nuclear weapons that they can use against the United States. They don't have nuclear weapons, period. Syria really does not have an effect on not just the United States, but they really don't have an effect on any European country as well. Their power is mostly regional. Iran's the only one that has any kind of power that's outside the region, but it does not have no effect really on America. And if we were to leave them alone, there would be no consequences to us. However, a country that the United States does help, or you could say Israel supports the United States, if you depending on how you look on it, who has the highest position on the ladder. Israel's effects are all across the world. Every country practically on the planet has to deal with their Mossad creeping around, and they are one of the most invasive, one of the most one of the most malignant intelligence agencies on the planet. And Israel has been trying to get us in this war with Iran for a few years now. And that was 2007 when Wesley Clark said that about 7 countries in 5 years. And then we haven't touched Iran. And Syria has been relatively – I mean, there's been the United States involvement, but I don't think it's that kind of United States involvement they were thinking of in the beginning. So really, you know, but the other 5 I think was Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, I think Sudan was one of them, which had a civil war in 2011 and split apart into 2 countries. But the ruling government there.
And South Sudan's a mess right now. I mean, it's an ugly mess. It's
like it's barely even a country. It's just like really just a bunch of. It's still up in the air, and it's like a lot of warlords, I think, and stuff like that, like are trying to take over the country. Sudan. They did mess up Sudan pretty badly. Libya got taken out 100%. Yemen, they definitely interfered with, and right now is in an ugly civil war. Even though that the people that are in power actually they're not friendly with Israel or the United States. The country's such a mess right now that they really can't have an effect on really anybody, and they can barely even govern their own country. Iraq and Afghanistan, of course, they did their job there. And Iran's the only one they really have completely without – they're in a total peace right now. There's no civil war there. The United States has not did any kind of intervention. So it is a wonder why they have not touched it yet after 10 years.
If the United States was to actually have to put troops on the ground in Iran, it would not be a cakewalk like it was in Iraq. You got to realize that, like, during the Iran-Iraq war – I think they lost something like 10 million people. The Iranians did. And of course, that's, you know, who did they lose? They lost men of fighting age. So that's why, like, Iran is one of the many reasons that Iran is looked at as a real threat. It's got a very young and well-educated population that's hungry and is very, very nationalistic. They love their country. You know, their dad died for the country.
Yeah, Iran is definitely their people are also they see the American government. They would see the fight against. They would take it up in a second. There wouldn't be much a backlash against that in their own country, and I think that the Iranians, they're still pissed at the Americans for what they wouldn't even. People here in America wouldn't even realize the reason that they're pissed in the first place, because that war that was brought up to them 30-something years ago now, was about 30 years ago, was brought to them by the United States, because the United States supported Saddam, and Saddam, with the United States approval, did invade Iran. It was really, in a way, Saddam was just acting as a proxy for the United States.
And the United States supplied both sides. We gave guns and bombs to Saddam, and we gave guns and bombs to the Ayatollah.
Yeah, well, there was, of course, the famous Iran-Contra scandal. We did supply the Iranian government, but I think the Iraqi government definitely had the higher end of the supply, and ultimately the invasion was justified, the thing that sparked the war in the first place. I mean, you remember Iraq that sparked the war. Iran was just defending themselves. And, in reality, the amount of support they had internationally was actually pretty low. I mean, the Russians didn't even support Iran, right? Russians actually supported Saddam Hussein. Well, the Soviets, it should be said. They weren't Russia. It was still Soviet Union. But the point is that, I've said that before, is that Iran would be 15 times worse than Iraq, because it's a much bigger army, or maybe not a much bigger army, but it's definitely a much it's well-trained army compared to Iraq's army, which was a ragtag army. Actually, they were the fourth biggest army in the world.
Iran's army was the fifth largest army in the world, and it was mainly conscripted soldiers. It was a way for the service in the military was either mandatory or it was a way for your family to eat. They weren't doing it because they loved their country.
No, and the morale was really low in Saddam's military. I mean, I think in the 91 war, it was said that they wouldn't even. A lot of times they wouldn't even have adequate clothes. So it really shows.
In the 91 war, there were entire Iraqi squads. 10, 15, 18, 20, 100 guys that were surrendering to cameramen. That were surrendering to a CNN dude.
Yeah, they were just like the first chance they got to surrender, they did it. That shows the low morale, especially after. I mean, these people had already fought, a war just a few years before that, and I don't think these people wanted to do it again. So the idea of actually fighting the United States, I think that for one, I would imagine that the Iraqis must have been a little bit confused by what was even going on, because the United States government was friends with them literally right up to that event. The United States gave, I don't know if that was public, but I know the United States gave the green light for the Kuwait invasion, but then they flipped on it.
Okay, so that didn't actually, it wasn't actually like an official green light. What happened was Saddam had a meeting with the United States ambassador to Iraq. Her name was April Glaspie, and he basically told her his plans to invade Kuwait. And by the way, his plans to invade Kuwait did not also involve any plans to invade Saudi Arabia, which is the pretense that we used to get there, right? But she told him that you do what you got to do. It's not really our problem. And then he invaded within 72 hours of that meeting. And then that was our chance. So, yeah, we built it. We set it up. We build the best boogeyman.
Well, yeah, so it is pretty much just the green light. You say, hey, go ahead, and they didn't. But we ultimately flipped it and said, hey, he's trying to go for Saudi Arabia, and that was enough for the United States to the American people to justify the invasion.
We told Saudi Arabia he was going for Saudi Arabia, and we doctored the satellite photos and everything, and we lied to them, but they live on top of oil. Somebody had to do it.
Yeah. And what I see with all of this, it's kind of funny that, they do the same kind of tactics today, but it's like today it's like Russia and Ukraine. They doctor the satellite photos and say, hey, look, they've already invaded, and they never actually did invade. You know, they've been saying for how long, for like 2 years now, over 2 years now, that the Russians invaded Ukraine, and there's still no proof besides the United States doctored satellite photos that they even entered, past Crimea. Of course, they've invaded the Crimea, but most of the people there want it to be invaded, and compared to live under the junta. So it's the same thing they were doing back then. Is that, oh, look, they invaded or getting close to doing this, and it's rely on what the media. If you rely on what the media tells you what this country's going to do, you'd believe that all these countries are actively about to either change our way of life or are going to invade one of our allies and change one of their ways of life. I mean, how many times have they told us over the years that that Russia was about to invade one of their close allies, or not one of their close allies, one of their close neighbors, that they were going to threaten the Baltic states or something to that nature, or definitely with Iran, that we even had in the Republican debates about, Ted Cruz is talking about how the Ayatollah is going to build bombs to nuke Israel and scaring people. And no, he said he was going to build bombs to nuke us and nuke Israel, I'm pretty sure, in the same debate. And Syria, mainly they rely on it, or they do the other thing. It's the humanitarian. We got to be the humanitarians in this situation. They're starving the people. Oh, these people are getting bombed by their government, and then we enter. How many times has that been done? And that's what I fear it could be the next thing is Venezuela, was that humanitarian excuse. Oh, we need to send the special forces down there because Caracas is starving the people of Venezuela, which would be total bullshit.
Right, they're being mean to the children. It always works better if you say something about the children and the women. Because remember, Gaddafi was giving his soldiers chocolate that was laced with Viagra and amphetamines because it would help them rape better.
Yeah, which I'm sure was probably a blatant lie, but
absolutely,
absolutely
was a lie.
But yeah, it's weird how quickly, when you start talking, how easy it is to Americans, to get them to all of a sudden be like, oh, that bastard, and then they don't have to fact check anything. They don't even fact check anything. They don't look up anything on the sources outside the mainstream media. But if you say that this government's doing that, they'll believe it. And the Iranian government, the one thing they've been using for them for many years, and I'm sure they'll be using when they do decide to invade, is that they've been mean to the Jewish population in Iran. They're anti-Semitic. Look at these people. They're like Nazis. The Syrian government, they've been saying that these people are killing. Well, they've been trying to say that they've been killing the Sunnis in the country, or that they've been discriminating against the Sunnis in the country. They've been taking that angle. Plus, they've been also saying is that look at these children starving. Look at these children. They've been injured by the bombs from Assad. But truth is that the people that have been using people as human shields are the rebels. And unfortunately, yes, a lot of children and innocent people in general have been caught in the crossfire of the bombs coming from both sides. However, the tactic that the rebels have used, and they've been caught using, is using children as human shields. There's no intent. They're trying to avoid civilian casualties from the Syrian government. But
I'm waiting for the Israelis to designate Palestinian women as human shield factories and they're now legal targets. That's what I'm waiting for.
And then when you see the double standards, obviously, in the coverage, when you see the Syrians actually fighting legitimate terrorists, and you see the tactics they use, they say that the Syrian governments are using these horror tactics, they're not actually targeting terrorists or whatnot. But then when the Israeli government targets actual civilians and these phantom terrorists that don't seem to actually be a reality, but they keep saying that Gaza's full of terrorists. They believe everything that the Israeli government tells them. The Israelis, one of their spokesmen comes up onto the CNN and uses the same few lies. They don't even change it up. It's like, oh, we didn't hear about the civilians being killed, but we'll check up on that. Oh, yeah, that was an accident. We're sorry. Oh, there was a Hamas in that building. Oh, we demolished that building because Hamas was there as well. Oh, we heard that these guys were working with these guys that were in Hamas. Oh, these guys were in Al-Qaeda. Just
unlimited. If
Why
you know,
are you still talking about this? What about Hamas? Yeah.
yeah, they'll keep saying, "Oh, Hamas is just trying to kill us because we're Jewish. How dare you try to go against our claims? What are you anti-Semitic?" You know, they'll get aggressive. Even start to even kind of show some aggressiveness towards even the CNN reporters. I could imagine, they probably won't even talk to anybody like alternative media or whatnot.
They show the aggressiveness with the CNN reporters because they've already paid these people. They're not, acting according to the contract. That's really why they get cranky with the CNN reports. They don't really get cranky. I mean, look, the CNN's anchorman, Wolf Blitzer, he's their top reporter. What was his job before he became the CNN mouthpiece? He was spokesman for AIPAC, the American and Israeli Political Action Committee. He's not necessarily a journalist.
I didn't even realize that. So he was their spokesman. That's of the organization. It's literally the most powerful lobbying group in America, and is responsible for. I mean, they pretty much are the ones that they recruit the congressmen at as soon as they get to Congress, they're the ones that take on trips to Israel, take them on the little propaganda tour, show them how peaceful the country is, but not take them anywhere near the wall or show them any of the suffering that the Palestinians have to go through or show them any of the racial divide they try to avoid that, or they probably would say, oh, no, that just happens to be that way, that there are no Palestinians anywhere on a Jewish bus or on a Jewish street. And that's very real. There's people talk about all the time about discrimination in Iran or whatever. There's fucking Jim Crow segregation in Israel. That's actually real. That's documented. And, you could, no matter how you try to, you could say for security reasons, that's the same excuse they used to give here, I'm sure, all the time back during Jim Crow segregation. Is, we're doing this for the safety of everyone involved. That's why we can't have the black people on the buses, or that's why or they have to sit at the back of the bus. Yeah, the Palestinians aren't being allowed on the bus in the first place.
Well, we can't talk about that.
Yeah, if you keep saying the certain buzzwords, we're going to shut off again, like that one time. One time I was actually talking about, I think it was Ukraine, and then like our show, it like started making a bunch of weird noises started to come through the radio. This is before UCY radio. I was still before I was on UCY radio. I was on Stable Old Radio. And it was like, it couldn't even talk over, I couldn't hear anything over it. So I had to just like end the show early. It was really weird. And it sounded like someone was breathing, but I don't know there was only two people on the line, and neither of us, I don't think we're doing it. So that was kind of creepy. And I was just like this disruptance. I don't know if that was that.
I really want to start getting into like the Israeli, I guess, tapeworm that they have like on the American communication system. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to. Well, I mean, there's the rumors of the Otago messenger service, sending out warnings to, certain chosen ones on the morning of 9/11 saying, don't go to work. There's what is it? Converse Infosys, which is a company that handles I don't know if they still handle it, but they used to handle a bunch of like phone switching things. That pipes right back to Israel. I mean, we've got information sharing agreements, like through the CIA and the Mossad, that we give the Israelis like raw intelligence, man. We just like, here, tap into these people's lines all you want, what is it? It's, room 301 at the AT&T building in San Francisco. That's where they hide out at.
Well, I didn't even. I got dropped off there for a second. What were we talking about?
The merchant and how the merchant's got his hooks on everything. Straight up honest. They've got they're tied into our American communication system. They have been. Information is the currency, and they want it all. And they get it. They get it raw.
Well, they've even started. I'm sure we're not too far away from many alternative media sites being labeled as hate groups or whatever. Just for talking about the Israel lobby or talking about the Zionists. And
well, I mean, look at the push right now for the fake news, and then realized that in the Senate it was just defeated like narrowly. I think it was only defeated by like 8 votes or something like that. Was the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act? There's no other group that gets any sort of like protection like that. And I mean, like, really, if you want to start looking at the numbers, I mean, they're 0.02% of the population.
Well, I thought they're like 1%, 2% of the population in the United States. They have like 60 million.
That's right. They're 2% of the American population. They're 0.2% of the entire world's population.
Yeah, they're 0.2% of the world. There's like 44 million in the entire globe. There's like 6 million of them live here in the United States.
And I mean, that's where it really ends right there. I mean, if we're going to like not use Common Core math skills and we're going to do math like we were all really taught how to do it, we got to look for the common denominator, right? And it's always there. It's always them.
Well, what do you mean by it's always them?
I'm saying that every time something funky happens in the United States or on the world stage, if you really start looking at it, you're always going to find that there's an Epstein or there's a Cohen or there's a Rosenberg or there's a banking institution or something like that involved. And maybe that makes me a horrible person and anti-Semitic or whatever for saying it. I don't really fucking care. It's the truth.
Yeah, you fucking Nazi. No, here's what I got.
Alt-right bastard.
That seems to be one of the buzzwords right now is the alt-right. And, it's like, I don't like the alt-right. But I feel like they probably the mainstream media, like if I was more attention towards my show, they'd be labeling me as alt-right. It's like a catch-all term for people that are not even fascist or not even any really
that's what you're getting at something really big there. It's a catch-all term that doesn't mean anything, and it's something that captivates the public. It's something that it kind of has a catchy ring to it. And you can get the sheep talking about something they know nothing about, and they'll talk about it incessantly because it sounds good. I mean, like seriously, like look at the last couple like ISIS bad guys that we've had to deal with that the Americans know. All right, so like you got Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, right? Like Baghdad, that's a word that Americans know. That's kind of Arab. We'll just put an I on the end of that and give it to them. And then there was the other one, Azam al-Amiriki. America, yeah, that sounds like America. They'll know that one. And now Americans are
totally one Jihadi John.
Right. They give them like these catchy names and now every American is an expert on radical Islamic terrorism. Yet they don't know a fucking thing about it because the United States, Britain, and Israel are the founders of radical Islamic terrorism. I mean, if you really look at it, you go into any kind of school that's in Afghanistan, in Saudi Arabia, that has any sort of like American NGO, non-governmental organization funding that comes in, gives aid and, we're going to help the children and shit. Well, you start looking at their math books and it's like, if Rajiv has 12 hand grenades and he throws 3 of them at the infidel pigs, how many hand grenades does Rajiv have left? They're propagandizing these kids from a tiny age. They built this shit. They need the instability.
Well, terrorists are good tools, and they can use the ISIS or whatever group. Really, it's like the spawn group of Mujahideen. Everything spawned off of it, and they use all these different terror groups whenever they need to.
But it's even before that because. It's even before that because, like, you start looking at like the opposition to the Balfour Plan. There was Islamic forces that were aligned against it, and yet some of those Islamic forces that were aligned against the Balfour Plan were actually part of the Judeo-British, the Judeo-international focus that actually put that into place, and. They built it. They built the entire thing. They had to. Because if you really look at it, I mean, Islam is what? There's like 2.6 billion, 2.8 billion Islams in the world. I mean, that's shit, dude. That's like half the world's population, coming up on close to half the world's population. You know, I mean,
well,
it's
that's
definitely
called
absurd.
Islam. That sounds like a term, that
Whatever, man. I mean, I said that on purpose. I called them Islams on purpose because this is what we're dealing with. This is how they want us to be dumbed down. And you know what? Fine, fuck it. I'll play their game.
Yeah, that sounds like the people that are so-called experts on terrorism, something they would say. It's like,
Yeah,
there's
4 out of 5 dentists agree that the
Islam
Islam
on the
is
planet.
radical.
It's like, oh my God, there's 2.8 billion Islams on the planet. You know how many that is? That's like 28 Americas of Islams, and there's us. We're so outnumbered. They're going to take over unless we go over there and kill some Islams. I'll tell you. We got to bring back George W. Bush. He was the expert at killing Islams. He killed like 1 million of them in Iraq.
And think about that. Think about the hatred that the media had towards George Bush and whatever kind of war that he had going on, the many encounters that we had. And then Obama comes in and they're silent about all the war. And yeah, but he won a Nobel Peace Prize. He's really trying. You're just being racist. You hate him because he's black. And now Trump comes in. He says he wants to end all the wars. And now you've got the flaming left anti-war crowd. They're screaming for war.
I know.
I mean, CNN is calling for like preemptive nuclear strikes on Russia. Like, you know what? I want to know exactly how bad this pedophile shit is, if that's what CNN is calling for.
Yeah,
Because I think all this bullshit about screaming about Russia in the election and Putin hacking this and blah blah blah, that's just noise to cover for the pedophile stuff that's going on.
Well, talk about that. Yeah, is that the mainstream media is almost like gave no coverage to it, and this is pretty disturbing shit that we're hearing. It's like we were talking the other day about the Epstein, Prince Andrew, and the Dershowitz scandal, Alan Dershowitz, the famous Zionist that has, apparently this political hack has a lot of credibility. People a lot of times quote him or whatnot, and he claims to be a person of civil liberties, but really, how can he be for civil liberties when he supports the Zionists that violate a ton of people's civil liberties? But you look at that scandal that happened, how that was, Dershowitz, I'm pretty sure all of them got, Dershowitz got a long time delayed. Epstein, he got away with only like 18 months in jail for what he did. That was a while ago. Remember, Dershowitz defended Epstein back when that was going on about 9 years ago. I think it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago. And Prince Andrew, there was an accusation against him about 2 years ago, and that fell through pretty much. These elites, obviously, many of them have done some pretty sick and twisted shit. And the thing is that because they're the ones in power, they don't get any real punishment when they actually do get caught. The internet right now, the internet's been going ablaze over this Pizzagate thing, and I do wonder, and I'm just gonna throw this out there: I feel like this thing has been made potentially on the internet hyper sensationalized into an extent to potentially take credibility away from it. That regular people won't tune in because they think it's insanity, or that they think that it's probably.
But it may seem like that. But the problem is there's a history for this. There's a history for this through all levels of our government, through all levels of our politicians, all levels of lobbying. This is no secret. I mean, look, if we really go back to it, just like within the United States government, like actual United States government employees that receive like tax money, they did an investigation of like government issued credit cards like 5 years ago or something, and they found there was like 2,700 employees that were using government paid credit cards to download porn, which included like child porn and like really crazy shit you can't talk about on the radio. And like none of them got fired. None of them got arrested or anything like that. And it was like, hey, will you stop downloading the child porn on the taxpayer's dollar, please? And could you probably go back to work? No, that's all that happened. I mean, this has been going on for years. I mean, if you really want to get into it, the Boys Town scandal during the Reagan administration. Boys Town's an orphanage that's like in Nebraska, for troubled youths and all that. Well, they were packing them boys up and putting them on planes and shipping them to the White House in the middle of the night so somebody could diddle them. You know, it's been going on for years.
Well, I was
Then you look at something like Andrew Breitbart, right? Who everybody's screaming about Breitbart and blah blah blah. I don't give a shit about Breitbart other than the fact that the dude is dead. And one of the last tweets he made before he died, he basically said, "What would America do if they found out that John Podesta was the leader of a child sex smuggling ring?" And then like 3 days later, he's dead. And then his coroner ends up dead. You know, it's been going on. It's to me, it's not crazy talk or far fetched.
No, but I'm saying is that what I was saying earlier. I'm not saying, of course, there's the history inside the government and elite. Like I said, the Epstein Bullshit with Andrew scandal, which I did a show up on really shows that. And there was the one billionaire that he did something similar to that nature, 3 months only, that he ended up in prison for, I think, raped his 3-year-old daughter. Absolutely horrific thing that he was charged with. Should have been executed.
Yeah, it was a DuPont. He was DuPont.
Yeah, DuPonts are one of the. When people talk about the 13 most powerful families on the planet, oftentimes the DuPonts are put right there. They are put there with the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and other ones. So you can see obviously that you can see why he only got 3 months, because he's practically from some of the people that control the country. Podesta and this other stuff, and Hillary Clinton, what was it, Huma Abedin, and all these other people that were implicated in this Pizzagate scandal. It's like I feel to an extent that the hyper sensationalization of that they might is like, instead of laying out is that it seems like some made not credible evidence of stuff that's probably that doesn't seem very
I'm sure there's all kinds of hyperbole that's being put out there and all kinds of stuff that's kind of shaky and it's not completely 100% verifiable.
It doesn't work to get if you wanted to get to the average person, you have to lay out with the factual stuff and bring up the previous scandals like that, like the one you talked about. That
yeah, I think seriously the past history shows that this isn't far fetched. I mean, for God's sake, if you really want to get into it, look at the guy who runs that pizza place. I mean, who takes their kids to that dude's restaurant? Like, seriously, like, if you have seen anything about this guy, this James LaFontis guy, which is kind of weird because it's like, if you take his name and pronounce it out and translate it to French, it becomes "I love the children." But if you really look at this guy, I mean, he's gay. That's his business for being gay, but he's got a whole lot of involvement with children that's just kind of on the creepy, like really on the creepy, and comments on his Instagram and on his Facebook and things like that.
I don't know. Yeah, that's all the things that about apparently. I don't know if that's true. I mean, how would this place even be able to run? Don't you think people would have fucking firebombed?
Because they're arrogant bastards. Because they are all arrogant bastards, and that's why they're pushing the fake news thing. That's why they're pushing the alt-right. That's why CNN is nothing but like a buzzword factory.
Well,
they're arrogant bastards. They believe their own shit for a long time, and now they've come to the stark realization that the American people don't believe anything they say.
No, but there was I was about to say is that all the things apparently about these disturbing paintings that were depicting these horrible things inside of the Comet Pizza or whatever. Apparently, it looks like that's why there's these leaked images or something like that. Or they're not leaked because these are apparently just in public display of really.
These are images that he put on his own Instagram account. That's what I'm getting at the arrogance of this whole thing.
Yeah,
but Hillary gave her news conference the other day, and she said that, blah, 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 Russia hacked this, blah, 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 Russia hacked that. And then she said that it was because Putin has a grudge against her because he personally hates her. And she can totally understand that Putin hates her, but she can't understand that 50% of this country absolutely hates her guts. I mean, like, wouldn't piss on her guts if they were on fire kind of hates her.
Oh, yeah.
She can't understand that, but it was Putin. And you know, you got them cock gobblers on the news that just, well, it was Putin. What are we going to do? We should probably nuke Moscow. What the hell?
Yeah, you know what's the weird thing that is really weird about this is that you got, again, like you said, those hippie left are talking about how we should nuke Moscow, and then we got like the rednecks that all throughout the Cold War were screaming about how we should nuke Moscow, are now like saying it's like, oh no, see that's one of them Hillary lies. But you know, that's a good thing. Now the rednecks are finally not calling, or at least I think they're not calling for war on Moscow or war on Russia like they were throughout the whole Cold War. Oh yeah, we should just nuke damn commies already. We should just already do it. No, now they're finally. It's a good thing.
I think this is where their arrogance. This is where their arrogance bit them in the ass, right? Because they, for so long, they could say, you know, oh, it's the Russians, and yeah, you know, you get everybody out lining up to get the kill a commie for your mommy tattoo, but that doesn't work anymore. And yet I think they truly believe that it still does. That if they tell the big lie and they tell it often enough, it'll become the truth. And I think that doesn't work anymore in the information age.
Yeah, if that nowadays people, you know, a lot of people. I think that for one thing, maybe Americans are finally starting to use some common sense a little bit. You know, I'm saying is that rural America may, because again, I see here's like a wasteland. You know, over here in St. Pete, because over here mainly what the city's made up of is people from other cities. So a lot of them are just, you know, Democrat party line Democrats. So they're not really we kind of think too much different than what the media's going to be calling them. And same thing, or party line Republicans. You know, they were going to vote for Jeb Bush if they had the chance. End up voting for Trump, not really because they like this populist message or anything like that, just because because he was a Republican nominee, more of that kind of Republican. Those are the ones that live in St. Pete, Florida. You know, would have voted Rubio. Would have voted. It's not like some of these people that out in rural America, they voted for Trump for either because of the populist message or, it is true, some of them because of the racism. But it's definitely a different crowd here. And here, it seems like most of the people seem to be, or a lot of people do believe Russia to be some variance or another. And you know, especially the liberals, I've noticed, that really think that Russia is like this malignant country that oppresses its own people and the gays in the country. I'll tell you one thing is that, you know, talking about that bill over there they had. The bill was really, if you look at what the bill was about, and this is how Clinton explained it, and it's the reality of it, and then partially there was one part that was about the banning of homosexual parades, gay parades. But the second part was also to prevent, and the reason of banning homosexual parades was to protect children from to see this shit. And also the second part was to prevent from being like Belgium or these other countries where they're actually discussing the legalization of pedophilia. So he doesn't want Russia to even come anywhere close to that. Well, in Western Europe, they're actually having a legitimate debate. That's how fucked up it is over there. So that was what that bill was about. And it was actually, the name of it was the bill against homosexual propaganda and against pedophilia, was the long name of the bill.
Well, in the bare essence of that, that's really nothing more than trying to protect the good of his country. And Russia has a population issue. You know, they've suffered quite a bit in the last 100 years. There's been large swaths of death that have, you know, walked through Russia and Eastern Europe. And I'll tell you, gays don't make babies. They don't reproduce. You can't have, you know, Adam and Steve and they don't make a child.
Yeah, well, Russia does have a population issue, you're right. And I think that right now that's why they're pushing, even giving government incentives to people that have lots of children.
I mean, the country has, 125 million people for the world's most, the biggest country by area on
I
the
think
planet.
the last number I saw that they had 190 million in Russia.
Maybe that was a low number. 190 though, still a very low number. I mean, for that country to be at
Well,
the
190 comes out to be that's 120 less than the United States, because we're if you count the illegal aliens, we're
We're
330
over
million.
320 now.
We're 320 now. We're at 320.
330.
Yeah,
we don't know the actual number, and again, so you could be off by 10 million because you have no idea who's coming over the borders.
But anyways, yeah, you're right. Is that Russia's still 130 million short of the United States, more than 130 million short than the United States. So that means that they definitely want to catch up, and it's very sparsely populated. Especially, over 190 million, a good portion of them, I mean, like the grand majority of them live west of a certain point. Moscow, St. Pete, a few cities over in the European part of Russia. Asian part of Russia, I don't know specific numbers of who lives in Siberia, but it's just a few million. We got one major city in Siberia, Novosibirsk. That's it. And probably like 1 or 2 million people. Besides that, there's the Russian Far East. Oh, yeah, there's also Vladivostok. It's not really Siberia, but that's over in the Pacific. That's an eastern city that they do have, Vladivostok. A lot of Russians, they want to fill in. They're actually giving, homesteading, allowing homesteading in the Russian Far East. So they're definitely trying to, and they want to put some more population specifically by the United States for a reason. Whether it's to, I think it's potentially made to ward off any kind of East invasion, across the Bering Sea or anything like that. If the United States try anything crazy, they can at least have some population over there, and they have bases. They're probably working on that soon to prevent any kind of invasion coming from the eastern part. Because I think an invasion from the western part, that's been tried twice by Napoleon and Hitler, and that didn't work. So maybe the United States, if they tried it, could try from the east, and that's what they're thinking. I'm not saying that that's what they're doing, but speculating. I've also seen I've seen that how sparsely populated. It's crazy. They just have real settlements over there. So if anybody wants to try to invade from the eastern side, there would be no military or anything, or very few military people. And in a fact of a war like that, the people, a lot of them are going to pick up guns and effectively become extra soldiers. And in the event of an invasion, they don't have too much protection over on that side. But the Western Europe, they're pretty covered over there. It would be like trying to go against goal line defense coming over from, you were to cross over from Latvia to those other countries, like they've done.
And that's been one of their weak points since they've been established. If you look back at World War II, if the Japanese would have even knocked at Russia's back door, Russia would have crumbled. Germany would have taken Moscow quite easily. The only reason that Stalin was able to actually hold them off was because he threw everything he had at them. He had no troops.
Yeah, there would have been nothing for an Eastern Front. If the Axis would have opened up a second front on Russia, like, how the Allies later opened up a second front on the Nazi Germany, they would have had no chances because the Russians sent everything practically, most of what they had, at Nazi troops over on the Western Front or the Eastern Front, if you see it in the perspective of the war in general. The Japanese mostly focused on China. They were tied up with a front over on China, and they were tied up with a front over with the United States. They had their own Western Eastern Front. To really open up a front with Russia would have been like a third front. The Japanese had their hands tied. That's why they never tried it. It's funny though when it comes to the whole equation. We'll talk about the Russians, and right now they'll always talk about war with them and whatnot. A lot of Americans forget that.
We got to remember that the threat of war with Russia, the current threat of war with Russia, is based on the fact that they hacked our election. A very wide-ranging claim that really doesn't mean anything. They hacked our election. All right, with the implication that they've had some sort of interference and influence the final decision. Not like we've ever done that even to Russia.
I laugh at that because I think of the many times all across Latin America, all the many times across the world that the CIA interfered.
But what I'm
with.
saying is we've done exactly what we're accusing Russia of doing. We did it to Russia. Boris Yeltsin came into power because of the United States.
Yeah, that's what I was laughing at. Is that the fact is we've done.
I mean, let alone the fact that we have like.
I did that the '96 election too. Is that we helped Boris Yeltsin, or the United States government helped Boris Yeltsin get a re-election. They helped and they brought him to power. You're right. If it wasn't for the United States, that drunk bastard wouldn't even been close to the Kremlin. But the United States.
Yeah, it would have been Vladimir Zhirinovsky who would have won. And he was an ultra-nationalist Russian, and he was not a friend of the CIA.
Well,
I think it's just funny that we're accusing. I mean, we're not going to look at Central America. We're not going to look at our own backyards. We're not going to look at Central America. We're not going to look at South America. We're not going to look at anything in Southeast Asia. We're not going to look at anything in Europe. We're not going to look at anything in Africa. We're going to focus on Russia, and we're going to accuse them of the exact same thing we did to them like 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's the hypocrisy of the United States. It's crazy. And just 20 years ago. It wasn't even that long ago that we did that. And I'm sure ultimately, remember that just a few years ago in the 2012 election, all those protests that happened right around the elections when Putin was almost certain to win, but all these protests started sparking up against Putin across the country. It was the 11-12 election, or 11 was the State Duma election, and the protests started happening in the 2012 presidential election. Around that time, it was like I was talking about the color revolution. If that this could have been made the start of a color revolution happening, or I made a warning that this could happen. But the thing is that the people of Russia support Putin so heavily. I mean, when you have 90% support or 89% support, it's very hard to start a color revolution. The only way that could happen would be some kind of coup or man assassination, which would be the intelligence services of Russia are so advanced that'd be very hard to do either of those. That's what really frustrates the United States government about Russia, is that they know that they're the one country, maybe the entire planet, maybe them North Korea, that's like impenetrable. Their intelligence is too good. They're
willing to take measures that the American intelligence services won't. All right, so there's a problem with, with all computers now. They have too many backdoors built into them, and like something like Windows 10, which just updates all the time and does whatever the hell it really wants to do, whether you want it to or not. Well, the Russians figured out a way around that. They went back to typewriters.
I saw one thing is that apparently when the Russians and the Americans, when they first were going to space, that the Americans were having a problem. They couldn't even write in space. They spent millions of dollars. I think they spent like $4.5 million. You can look it up when you get a chance, to make a pen that worked in space. And then the Russians, they used a pencil, and that worked. The Russians,
right. Yeah. The space pen was like a $12 million project to figure out the pen in space. Yeah, and the Russians used a pencil.
Or there's another thing that the Russians, they use like common sense approaches sometimes, and sometimes just the old way. Like for example, instead of using a high tech thing, we just use a typewriter. Instead of developing a space pen, we just use common sense solution of using a pencil. Or how about, instead of, in case of an EMP strike, that's what they said, that they, instead of using the radios as the transistors, back during the Cold War, they used the radio still with the tube. They know that in EMP transistors, anything with transistors would be roached, done, not able to use, but tube radios still probably worked. That's what I was noticing that they did like that. The Russians are like that, and nowadays they you said the thing about the documents, the typewriters.
that's the thing, is that their FSB are very clever, and a lot of people say that they're the best spy agency on the planet. Ultimately the CIA. I think that what it comes down to is that some of the people that are intelligence services are kind of like, how they show on their show Archer, kind of doofuses that are thinking about party or whatnot. I think there are people a little bit more serious. I'm sure at this point it's very similar to the CIA, the SSB. I feel like that's why in comparison, the CIA usually can thwart whatever little country, Venezuela or whatnot. They can do a lot of sabotage against them. They get away with a lot of stuff because ultimately their intelligence is just not at the level at the CIA level of and also the network that they have. They've been very good at stopping stuff, but still they can't stop everything. Or in with Chile during the 1973 when they had the coup happening, the CIA was very easily was able to do the coup. And now that's partially just because of I think it was partially Allende's bravado. He didn't think that the coup was going to happen. It did happen. Putin's not going to. He's practical. He's not going to let bravado get in the way. The advisors told him that something was brewing. I think he would listen. Allende, that think about successful coup that the United States did, or that was part of the problem, because that he just wouldn't listen to the handwriting on the wall. And when it actually did happen, and when he finally took some kind of plan of action, it was already way too late. He saved the coup on September 11th, 1973. Same thing in a lot of Latin American countries come down to similar situations. Sometimes I think that they're just not prepared. Russia's prepared. Their intelligence is prepared for whatever things that they throw. And I'm sure that there's probably been so many countless attempts probably at Putin blank. Now we're going towards the I'm about to go into the new year now in 2 weeks, and soon we're going to actually have the inauguration of Trump. And I had earlier you said the break.
Yeah, it's like only like 32 days till 32 days till the Trump inauguration, man. 32 shopping days. Buy your body armor and bullets now.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's kind of throw this into something that's a little more topical and closer to home right now. Tomorrow is when the Electoral College, I guess, they meet in their respective locales and cast their votes. Currently, the great big push on CNN, the current buzzword of the day is the Hamilton electors. And it's really funny that they keep on holding up Hamilton as some sort of hero. If you actually figure out who Alexander Hamilton really was, he's kind of a scumbag in the end.
Just a kind of scumbag. He was a terrible scumbag.
He was total scumbag. He was a total tool of the merchant. He was part of the
British saboteur.
I mean, a lot of the things that he did. I mean, he had a big part in the Whiskey Rebellion, which was a tax levied to pay back debt to the Rothschilds, to pay back war debt to the Rothschilds.
Well, and the Hamilton tried to create a central bank in this country, so he was the first one to do that. He was before, Hamilton
he's
did it.
a total banking stooge, and he's the false hero of the moment. I mean, there's that Broadway play, and CNN keeps on using this term Hamilton electors, and in reference to the fact that these electors can actually vote against the way that their areas have decided to vote. And they've come up with the plan, I guess. They either need 37 or they need 10 electors to flip, and one of two different ways, I guess. 37 total electors to flip, or if they get these 10 to flip, it makes others flip. And I really think that they're pushing for something bad to happen. And, you brought up the color revolutions earlier, and the Soros money that we've seen that finance that, and the Soros CIA funded, because the United States was involved with that. That's not just some kind of private thing. We were involved in every one of those color revolutions. with the great big divide that's growing wider by the day in this country, and do you see any sort of shenanigans occurring? Because I'll tell you what, I truly do, and I'd almost say that it will be termed like the American Spring, and it'll be also called the Purple Revolution, and I wouldn't be surprised if it kicks off in March.
Here's my thing though, is that I see is okay. Trump's not like Allende or something. No, that's actually a good leader that actually went against the New World Order. No, is that Trump's just ultimately one more of their puppets. So I don't really see them needing to go to any kind of drastic actions in order to take them out. This whole electoral college, I feel like it's just somewhat of a show, and it's not going to really lead to anything. I don't think that Trump's going to not get elected tomorrow by the electoral college. I don't see Clinton sneaking in at this point. I think they're going to go with Trump, and Trump.
No, I don't think it would be. It wouldn't. They wouldn't revert it and give it to Hillary. That wouldn't happen. They would end up giving it to somebody like Jeb Bush or Paul Ryan or Tom Cotton or some other Israeli lackey.
Well, I don't see that happening either.
Trump isn't an Israeli lackey, but they would
Trump
give it
is
to
Israeli. Trump is an Israeli lackey.
I agree with that. I agree that Trump is, but they would give it to somebody who is a confirmed and 100% dyed in the wool, and they got the videotape of him with the young boy to prove it. You know what I mean?
Trump is Israeli lackey, but you're saying, they might go with somebody that's more like the establishment neocons that have been around for a long time, like Jeb Bush or Paul Ryan or even Gingrich or I don't know. Like you said, even like Tom Cotton, any of those guys, But I don't see it happening because of the kind of uproar that caused this country. Because I know that a lot of people are, there's a lot of people that talk about even like they would take up guns or whatever if the Trump election was denied. So I don't think that it's going to happen. I don't think that they're going to revert at this point. I think Trump is going to be a different person than what we saw on the campaign trail. And he's going to stay on the stuff that they agree with him on. There's a few things that I think that they, for example, the wall is not going to get built. Like you said, it's the crappy TV that they give you when they sell you the car. That's what the wall is. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why the wall will never be built, because if the wall is built, revolution would happen in Mexico. And that sounds like a, kind of a stretch, but I'll tell you why. That wall is built, it's going to cause a lot of strain and tension inside the country. There's going to be a lot of Mexicans screaming. It's like to Peña Nieto, why doesn't he stand up to Trump? Which he never will, because Peña Nieto is a coward and he's ultimately from the same. He's cut from the same cloth that Trump is. But Peña Nieto and Trump would still be friends, and that wall's built. Now Mexicans are pissed off, and they're going to finally there'll be enough pressure. I think it'd be like a pressure cooker, and also it probably would, and Mexicans would feel trapped inside of Mexico a little bit because of the wall. So they would eventually revolt, inside their own country. And I think Mexico would probably end up in the hands of somebody like Obrador, who is, like Chavista South.
Mexico would end up in whoever the Chinese want to be there. Because
I think that
the Chinese influence in Mexico is growing by the second, and there's not a whole lot the United States can do except have Israeli dual citizens go and buy their television and propagandize them that it's not happening.
Well, that's already their TV's already ran by those kind of people.
Right.
I mean, take a piece of
absolutely.
Yeah.
The merchant has bought almost all the Spanish language broadcasting in the United States and a good portion of it in Mexico. And they're doing their damnedest to feed them the same kind of crap they feed us and keeping their eyes off what's going on with the Chinese. Now, the Mexican people are a lot different than American people because they've been a subjugated people for a long time. And now they've come into this new era where there's almost a push for human rights and an improvement of standards and an increase in communications. Well, the old lessons don't necessarily die. They still realize in Mexico that the people in power are scumbags. People in power are there to rob you. And I think Americans are starting to get to that point now. They didn't feel that way 15 years ago.
Yeah. Well, talk about who controls the media over there in Mexico. Yeah, their biggest one is owned by one of these people that are from the elite, so Televisa and Mexican government. They might Mexican people might realize that their government's corrupt. But, I think a lot of people in America realize it, but they just feel like there's no other option, and they just play into the games anyway. The election kind of shows that, because a lot of people that would have not voted at all voted for Trump, thinking they would give him a solution. Just like back in '08, a lot of people that never voted for Obama, but then they voted for the first time because of Obama. And you go back a few more elections, you go back to 1980, and Reagan's another example of that. It's even somebody that people felt like, oh, he's different than every other person who's ever ran before. This guy is a man of change. Even Nixon even had, I think, a guy with some of that kind of appeal back when he ran in 1968. So it's like, and they believed, oh, okay, Nixon's going to end the Vietnam War. 1980, Reagan's going to fix the situation with us and the Soviets, or that he's going to bring an end to the Afghan War with the Soviets. Oh, 2008, Obama's going to pull us out of Iraq and Afghanistan. 2016, Trump's going to pull us out of Syria. He's going to also it can prevent war with Russia. But in the end, it's all bullshit campaign promises.
Well, absolutely, and that's really where I find, like, in social media and in the broadcast and print media, that's where I find, like, this great big disconnect. Is all these people are going to scream and piss and moan about, oh, Trump's a liar and Trump is this and Trump is breaking his campaign promises, like they just got here or something. They don't remember read my lips. They don't remember any of Bill Clinton's I did not have sex with that woman, finger wag, Miss Lewinsky. They all lie.
Well, yeah, every single one of them since LBJ, and then before LBJ, before Kennedy, you had everyone going back to Wilson. So it's they all were liars on different issues and broke their campaign promises. I mean, you had you go all the way from LBJ talking about how this is not going to be, this is a winnable war. And there wasn't a winnable war, and we obviously lost that war. You had Nixon talking about, I'm pretty sure he kept saying about how the South Vietnamese would get their country, and that we'd be able to, pull out a victory in that war, but ultimately it was a complete total loss, and you keep going on, and every single one seems to have some major lie. May Ford and Carter, because they were practically do nothing presidents. Reagan, Reagan, there was all kinds of crap, the Iran-Contra scandal. I know nothing about the Iran-Contra scandal. Bullshit. He knew practically everything about that. 88, Bush Sr., read my lips, no new taxes. Bill Clinton, come on. Do I even have to explain that? Bush.
Right.
Yeah, come on. Do I have to explain that at this point? The recent ones, it's like, do I even have to explain that? These weren't even that long ago, and the lies are just like, if you put into papers, if you had papers of the lies they would have, it'd be like, take up a bunch of file cabinets. Obama, ridiculous shit that's going from Iraq to Afghanistan. I'm going to close Guantanamo. Or one of everybody's favorites one. Well, you can keep your health care plan if you like it. Oh, my God. I personally have seen, the other day I had to deal with that bullshit, and their website was like, it was one of the worst websites ever. Like, it's so slow, freezes up. And then a lot of Americans are right now feeling the pain of that. And now it's what's Trump's big lie going to be? The wall? Is it going to be probably Syria is going to be one of the big ones. Is that he made it seem like we're not going to get involved with Syria. We're going to be involved with Syria, I bet, next year, honestly, in a much bigger scale than we already are, just by the fact that Netanyahu talked about some false flag that was going to happen 3 to 4 years back in 2013. That's scary, because when Netanyahu says something, better take warning of that. And also, Cheney also prognosticated some big event happening soon as well. So, he predicted events. He predicted it. I think he said something worse than 9/11, and then Netanyahu said in New York. So if you piece it together, next year there's probably going to be some false flag worse than 9/11 happening in New York. I don't know what the hell it's going to be, but it's going to shock the shit out of Americans when it happens, and it's going to be enough. And it's probably going to be something like Persians on a plane.
Oh no, that game's already been played, and we need something big this time. And I don't mean dirty bomb big. I mean actual, replay this on CNN over and over again. The great big fireball going up into the sky.
What, are you talking about like a nuke or something?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I'm talking about.
You think they're going to nuke New York or something? If that's what you're saying.
Honestly, I don't think it would be New York. I think it'd be simple because it doesn't make financial sense to knock out New York, right? But it does make financial sense to knock out a place that's kind of blighted, and Detroit. Well, hey, Chicago just happens to be the center of the FEMA region that Detroit happens to be in. Detroit's not in its own. Detroit's in the Chicago FEMA region, and Rahm Emanuel is king of Chicago.
I don't think they're going to go to something as big as a nuclear weapon.
They have to. They have to. It has to be an order of magnitude 10 times bigger than the last one.
So that's
it has. People, if they killed 3,000 people again, they won't care. People won't care. It'll be outrage, and it'll garner as much news as a week with 2 school shootings in it. That's how much news it'll be. But it's got to be big. It's got to be 30,000 people, 50,000 people, 300,000 people.
Well, when you say those kind of numbers, you know what that kind of sounds like? It sounds like a sports game or something like that.
Yeah. It could easily be what was that? I think it was Clear and Present Danger, the book that Tom Clancy wrote. The Super Bowl was going on in Denver, and they blew up the Super Bowl. That was an Islamic group in the book, and I think in the movie it was in the movie it was neo-Nazis that did it, but in the book it was an Islamic group that snuck a nuclear bomb inside of I think it was a TV company van, like a broadcast van. They snuck it into the stadium and blew it up. And
scary. That sounds like it actually happened. Like that's
Well, interestingly enough, the author of that book, Tom Clancy, is dead.
He's dead. Yeah, I was going to say that. He's dead. I'm not going to, I mean, there's been rumors that there's going to be a false flag at a Super Bowl for like the last 4 or 5 Super Bowls, maybe 6 Super Bowls. So I'm not going to fall into that, clickbait story, that they picked the Super Bowl. But I'm just saying that number sounds like some kind of sporting event. It's like that means they would have to knock out. They would have to do it in Houston, because that's where the Super Bowl's happening this year. But that would definitely gather a lot of national attention. Think about that. It's like the perfect story. It's like, when the Cowboys were going to the Super Bowl, because everybody, it seems like Cowboys is like America's team. Like the Cowboys and Patriots might even be in the same Super Bowl together. That's like America's 2 teams right there. They are on that Super Bowl where that happens. I mean, I can just imagine, that it's like it's like goes with like the Flight 93. It goes with the whole story part of it. Is that it really captured the emotions and the hearts of the American people. I would think that it's probably going to be some kind of, if this happens, it's just speculating. Is that you're probably right. Is that it has to be worse than the last event. The last event, honestly, I think if something like that happened again, it'd probably just be a few weeks and it'd probably be off the news. But something like their square or something like that, like what they were saying almost happened at the New York Times or the Times Square a few years ago, where a bomb almost went off. If that happened, that would be something that could really scare the crap out of Americans, and would have people calling for World War III against Iran. People would be volunteering. They wouldn't even have to do a draft, like what happened after 9/11. That a lot of people were all of a sudden felt like they had to join the military, and there was a lot of people that were even 45 years old and stuff like that. People that were way back and had been in Grenada and shit like that were all of a sudden signing up and rejoined the military after they had been out for years. One of my dad's old military friends was
he was like 40-something years old. You know, he was older than my dad by a few years, and he was in the 80s and came back to go to Iraq, and he was involved with some ambush over there or something like that early on in the war. He actually wrote a book about it. I don't know what the name of the book. Yeah, but it's like I'm saying, he's like one of those, he's your typical, riled up, America, fuck yeah type of people. A little bit more intelligent. What I'm saying is that's all. It just shows that I can think of it.
Well, there's definitely a level of like, there's definitely a level of like jingoistic pride in with most Americans when it comes to the thought of America, because in school we were taught America was great. That's what we grew up. We said the Pledge of Allegiance every day. You went out and you played Army Man at recess. It was a lot of programming and a lot of propaganda, and I think that with the change to today's society, I don't think they counted on what would happen with the people who grew up with that propaganda, or maybe they did count on that it would lead to this kind of strife that we have now. And, honestly, the edge of revolution. And I mean, I've kind of said like a variation of this before, but I truly believe it. It's one thing when you get like the Starbucks barista crowd and the welfare people and the gays and, the professionally oppressed and appalled to go out there and riot and protest, and a Foot Locker gets burnt down and broken into, or a Walgreens gets looted or something. But hey, that's the price of democracy in America. It's a completely different thing when a guy who's got a job and he's got a car payment, he's got a wife and kids, he decides to take the day off to go and protest. Because remember, that dude buys his own ammo. It's a completely different thing, and I don't. Maybe they want that to happen.
Well, why they would have to do a revolution in this country when they already are in charge?
Because you have to eliminate the opposition. Because you can be in charge all you want, but I mean, still at the end of the day, it's one jail guard looking at an entire wing of a prison, 10,000 guys. If you want to like break it down into something like that, it's one overseer, one guy on horseback watching 5,000 slaves in a field. At some point, they got to cut down the number of slaves in the field. And who is the robber baron? The capitalist from the early 20th century that said he was rich enough that he could pay half the population to kill the other half. That's kind of like a jackass statement, but in every statement like that, there's a bunch of truth. You there? I don't know if I lost you. Well, I guess I lost Chris. I don't know how that happened. I'm going to keep on talking like I'm on air still. So, yeah, I guess in the end, you almost have to look at like the war in a greater term than just the actual profit. I mean, there's more than just monetary profits. There's bigger profits than that, than the economics and the finance of the whole thing. One of the bigger benefits to running a war is that population control, and not necessarily the elimination of the population, like surplus population, but you get rid of a certain segment of that population. You get rid of the young bucks, the guys who have to go out and get it, the guys who will, they don't necessarily like a whole lot of authority. And
hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Good. I'm glad you're back.
I was still okay.
Let me finish this up. But I mean, like the war ends up killing those guys, the young Spartans, the young warriors of the tribe. and it either kills them or it brings them back in some horrible condition, and not all of them, but enough of them to where that a whole lot of resistance to the current regime, that threat is eliminated.
Well,
so yeah, the war's got to keep on going on, you know.
I've thought that, you know, if there was going to be some kind of mass disturbance in this country that would result in a lot of people, you know, perishing, or a lot of people, you know, that they could justify martial law on, you know, I thought that thing would be possibly, you know, by the way it was going with all these different events that they use on the media to divide, I thought it would be a race war. You know, that's what probably, in my mind, would probably lead to some kind of, you know, a lot of people getting killed, or a lot of martial law happening. You know, I think the ultimate thing is the threat of World War III would probably be the thing they're going to justify martial law. You know, when World War III happens, martial law is going to happen at the same time. It definitely seems that, you know, of course, they talk about, the elites talk all the time about depopulation. There's going to be a point where they're going to want to take out a lot of Americans. Now, you know, there's different theories on how they're going to do that. Also, some people, and actually I think they're doing it really already. The depopulation agenda is already in place, and they do it's a soft kill. What do a lot of people having us eat this poison food and having us drinking the fluoride in the water and stuff like that. It leads to people living shorter lifespans, and it controls the population. You know, instead of instead of it going to 400 million in a few years, it'll be now delayed for about 15 more years before we reach 400 million. And eventually they're going to want to reverse it. You know, they don't want to hit 415 years and then 535 years. What they want is that eventually the population of the entire planet to be 500 million is what the goal is, apparently, according to the George Guidestones, that they'll be down to 500 million at one point for the world population. That's probably going to be caused by war and the other things, how they figure that. They mainly focus on the third world countries first, I think, because, you know, they deal with the different things. The AIDS is one way. You know, people that take a little research into that, you realize that AIDS is a patent to it. For sure, you can punch in a certain number, you can find it. And AIDS also has it's created. You know, the whole story about Gallo and whatnot. You know, people should think, well, you know, it seems to go from the scientist that was working with it, and then also goes out into the population of humans. It's a created virus in the first place. You know,
well, I mean, look at the story. The story that they fed us about AIDS for forever was absolute bullshit. It did not come from some African bushman who was slaughtering a monkey and cut his hand and, like, you know, mixed monkey blood in his hand, and then had sex with some, you know, Air France stewardess guy, and, you know, then it exploded. No, that doesn't make any sense at all. That's an absolute impossibility, you know. And then if you really want to get, like, kind of like weirdly conspiratorial, like, after it was out and about, this is about the time that Bill Clinton was the governor in Arkansas. Their prison system had a blood program, right? And what it was inmates donating blood, and that blood actually got spun into plasma. Some of it was actually whole blood, but most of it was spun down into plasma and then used for processing. Well, in the United States, you cannot do that. You can't use prisoners for that. Well, they were using some of the cream of the crop prisoners, so to speak. And, you know, in a situation like a blood donation, let cream of the crop, you know, take its imagination. What kind of bloodborne disease do you not want to have? They were getting the blood from that guy. And they were bleeding them like 3 times the normal amount that you're supposed to bleed somebody to, you know, for donations. There was no checks. The testing was falsified, and then that blood could not be sold in the United States, but it could be sold elsewhere. And they basically lied about the product, and they're responsible for like 20,000 cases of HIV in Canada, like 80,000 cases of hepatitis C in Canada, and like worldwide, it's like 250,000 cases of HIV, and God knows how many cases of hepatitis C. And that's all directly traceable to that Arkansas prison blood, which was under the auspices of the governor of Arkansas.
Which was Bill Clinton.
Which was Bill Clinton. And another interesting thing about this, I don't want to be like totally conspiratorial, but it's just like when you talk about the Clintons, it's just a continuous series of just funny, weird coincidences that are totally not a conspiracy unless Hillary says they are a conspiracy. But the news about the Arkansas prison blood scandal really broke like at the day before Vince Foster died. I'm not going to say he killed himself, but the day before he died. And Vince Foster was, well, he was one of the Clinton attorneys in Arkansas. He was all over that.
Yeah, Vince Foster was, one of the many people. I mean, it's been like hundreds of people, hasn't it? Or at least like 47, I think is the number, right? They've been, tied suspiciously around the Clinton family. It's a really big list of true blood that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton have left behind, the Clinton family in general, from bodyguards to like their pilots, stuff like that. And I mean, it's just examples. I don't know if there's actually a pilot involved, but I'm saying there's a big list. I can't really think of too many names right now. The only one I can really think of is the Vince Foster one, specific names, but of people that suspiciously died around the Clinton family. And it's almost like goes back to like that list, it's like you go back to JFK, people that witnessed the JFK assassination, all those people that died suspiciously after that. And it's weird how they just like Americans, they don't think twice. Oh yeah, that guy just got in the car crash, a couple months after he saw that massive thing happen, JFK assassination. There's even one like crowd chopped in the neck and stuff like that. It was one of the ways that one of the JFK assassination witnesses died. There's been many. That's how they do it. They don't do it perhaps blatant and out loud as they do, like for example in Africa or something like that. When they want to assassinate somebody, they just shoot them at their speech right there in front of everybody. They do it via stuff like that. They'll say, "Oh, you had a heart attack or whatnot. Oh, you had you crashed your car." I think we had a governor here in Florida, I think like 20 years ago. Well, it makes me wonder, it's like one of the excuses they would use. I don't know what he exactly was doing at the time. I think it was Governor Childs. That was he died on the treadmill about 20 years ago here in Florida. Then later we had Jeb Bush become president.
Really? I didn't know that. That's how that happened.
Yeah, I'll look it up, the specifics of it. Yeah, he was like our governor back in the 90s, and Jeb Bush becomes governor like right after that, not too long after that. So that's what makes me think. I don't know any specifics besides I think he fought for I think he got our little bit of good made the Florida healthcare system, or that helps children get insured or whatnot. I think that's what he worked with. That's the only thing I can think of the child did. I don't know too much about that, but I'd say that happened. And it's like, then also they're around that same time, another, think about the two like dynasties, political dynasties in America, the Clintons and the Bushes. The Clinton also got in via a weird way like that, but it was because the person that would have won the New York Senate seat, JFK Jr., got in the plane crash, and then Clinton was able to take the Senate seat that she would have never had.
Yeah, these are just interesting coincidences. I mean, it's not necessarily, you cannot look. What's the statement? Correlation is not causation, but it stinks all to hell. It stinks all to hell. Anybody who's got any sort of any kind of rational thought about this looks at anything connected to the Clintons like that and goes, And honestly, like I said earlier, anything that goes wrong in the entire United States, the entire world, you look at it and 85% of the time it's going to be, there's the merchant. There's the merchant, or there's the people that the merchant paid, or the merchant benefits from running it. So, but, these are just coincidences.
And
If you were to say it was any different, it's fake news.
I say I looked it up. Is that okay? Here it was. Is that Governor Childs? He died actually a couple weeks after his last term ended. Bush had just became the governor. He was elected, or I don't think he actually officially been sworn in yet. In fact, it was 3 weeks before he was about to be sworn in. Bush won the election already, but they were like in the interim period. Childs was still technically the governor of Florida at that point. Yeah, and then he died on his cycling machine at the governor's mansion. He was actually in the governor's mansion when he had a fatal heart attack. Don't know too much about what he was involved with. But, I mean, it was apparently he had like a pretty. I'm looking right now. He had kind of he had a quadruple bypass apparently in like 13 years before that. So it wasn't like he was a picture of health. And
Well, you know what? Honestly, at that time, then there might not be anything funky with that. There could be, but yeah. When did Jeb become president? Or governor of Florida?
He became governor right when that happened. Literally just a few weeks before that happened. 98.
98. So 98 and 13 years before that would have been 85. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense because of the way that the bypasses were done back then. Yeah, that makes sense. About 13, 14, 15 years on that. Yeah, about 15 years is what you would have got off of a bypass back then.
Yeah,
So
a few things, and also it says that he also suffered with clinical depression. It said back, that's what caused him. He actually to retire. He retired and came back to politics. Is what he said. So he had some health problems. I just felt like that should be noted. It's like one of the things to speculate into. Because I think if Jeb Bush becomes the governor,
and that's a good point. If it was an isolated incident, yeah, but it's just one of the many, many interesting coincidences.
Yeah, it's probably what I like to imagine. And also, what was interesting about him is that he was like, it was like the last, I guess you could say, old style governor that Florida had. I think he still wore like coonskin caps. He was like an actual Floridian, country Floridian, and then we ended up getting Jeb Bush, political elite. Texas not even from our state, and then after that we have the succession, Chris Scott. It marked a change. 98. Once we had Bush was really the first, I guess you could say, complete act, total, from one of the political dynasties that becomes the governor of the state. We're towards the end of the show here, so I wanted to ask you this question, Vic, since you said that all this Russia stuff is probably covered up for that. Do you think that all the Pizzagate stuff? Do you think if you had to say whether you think it's true or not, do you think it's true, or do you just?
Yeah, I think Pizzagate is true. I think John Podesta is probably a pedophile. Look, it's on record that John Podesta is good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He's great friends with Denny Hastert, and he was awesome friends with that dude from Penn State, Jerry Sandusky.
Really?
I can understand somebody being a friend with one pedophile, because you know what? It happens, and 60 degrees of separation. Everybody's got a cousin, uncle, brother, friend, something like that you could be somewhat tied to. I can even see two on the outside. But when you got three best buddies, lifelong friends that are pedophiles, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
You get judged by the company you keep. And you're already fucked because you hang out with Hillary.
Well, that's the
but
thing.
You hang out with not to mention any of the other stuff, but just based on them three things, this Pizzagate stuff started with allegations against Podesta. Yes, it's true. I'd bet money on it.
But okay, and you think that the other parts are true? To the extent that they're trafficking children from not even from all over the country. Apparently, what was being alleged that they were bringing them over from Chicago or something like that to bring to Washington D.C.
Yeah. Well, I whatever the allegation is, no matter how nasty it is, yeah, no, I think they're doing it. Absolutely, I think they're doing it. They've done it before. Why would now be any different? They got a 150-year history of doing that, at least here, that we know about.
Well, yeah, there's been also the scandals. Again, it's like they're.
And it's not just in the United States, worldwide. Look at Berlusconi, man. The dude, the king of Italy. He's hooked up with the mob. He's hooked up. He's hooked up with the CFR. He's in all kinds of like weird international Bilderberger kind of groups, and he's like bungaing with like 13-year-old Moroccan girls. It's everywhere. Look at the brother of Sarkozy from France. Sarkozy's brother, he's like, I don't know, like 56, 57 years old. You know who his girlfriend is?
What? Who?
One of them Olsen girls from that TV show. Them little waif-looking girls. Yeah, she's 19 now.
Well, I find it weird that Berlusconi, though, he ended up in court or whatever for some of that shit, or some of the accusations are brought up against.
Where did he go to jail?
Yeah, I think Berlusconi did go to jail. Now it's some other person. Yeah, he was like a long time running.
I mean, but he didn't get executed. He's not still in jail. If he went to jail for a week and they got him out, nothing happens to those guys. They just lose their big public eye, and then that's it. Nothing happens to them. The only way they die is if they actually threaten the overall structure. Then their plane crashes.
Well, when it comes to that, I think, unfortunately, if I had to make a verdict on from what I've seen so far, is that I have to say, yeah, it looks like this shit is true. I mean, and definitely the part was Podesta. Definitely the part was, of course, if he knew Epstein, I know that he knows Epstein, so Epstein, factually, there's no even conspiracy to that part. It's factually, he went to jail. He got slap on the wrist sentence, and what else? And also the fact is that Anthony Weiner was there. I mean, that guy's. What else needs to be said about Anthony Weiner? And also,
really, I mean, yeah, I mean, Hillary's chief of staff, or whatever her right-hand man, whatever Huma was, I don't know what her actual official title was. She's married to like the world's. She's being hailed as like the queen of the Muslim Brotherhood, yet she's married to the most stereotypical Jewish pervert in the entire world. How the hell did the caliphate allow that?
Well, again, you got to question how Muslim really Huma Abedin is. And again, she might be about as Muslim as like.
She might be Muslim or she's not Muslim, but that's what the media puts out. That it's on the right wing side, the whole counter. Hillary side, that's totally influenced with the neocon bullshit, because that whole thing about the Muslims taking over is neocon bullshit. That is absolutely that's the same kind of bullshit that says that Iran's been 6 months away from a nuke for the last 26 years. Like Iran just can't seal the deal.
Well, they make it those people that are supposedly I see some of the people that say that. It's like, oh yeah, the big conspiracy is actually that Iran is that our government secretly working with Iran, that Obama is getting cozy with Iran. But the truth is that actually they put more and more sanctions on Iran. They're making it more and more tougher all the time they're making it tougher and tougher for the Iranian government all the time, and they're strangling their economy. Actually, it looks like they're starting to go down the route of what they did. With the sanctions in the 90s, kind of slowly tensing up with Iraq. It's not really a comparable situation, but then again, it's comparable situations. Like in that situation there, I think that
I think they control. With Alex Jones on one side and Franco Gore on the other side, they have the controlled versions of the alternative media. It's like that Fox and MSNBC used to be like the ones that they could control people with because people used to watch the mainstream media more. Now they're doing it with the alternative media because now a lot more people turn to alternative media, but now they're going to be 2 steps ahead of them because they'll already have controlled Alex Jones and Franco Gore. And it's kind of funny, they get in confrontation with each other at the RNC. They make it seem like that.
Two gatekeepers fighting over who's going to stand in front of the gate.
Pretty much. That's exactly what happened. And but it was entertaining.
You got peanut butter in my chocolate. You got chocolate on my peanut butter. Yeah, no.
Remember that one? What was funny about that is that one girl from the Young Turks yells out, "It's like, get off the stage, you fat fuck!" And I'm like, well, Franco Gore doesn't miss many meals either, so.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the Young Jerks is a bunch of crap. I think I know for a fact Alex Jones is a bunch of crap.
Young Turks is if not more.
Honestly, I don't really want to listen to any of these people other than CNN because honestly, CNN is like tapping into the enemy communications, especially if you don't actually watch CNN, but you listen to its its simulcast. It's like tapping into the enemy communications, the enemy thought process. Other than that, I want to listen to what's on UCY, and I want to listen to like interviews with dead people because they're dead for a reason. And honestly, if you really want some good interviews, get some interviews from Malcolm X. You'll see why he's dead. Don't watch documentaries on any of these people. Watch actual interviews. It's really illuminating.
Yeah, Malcolm X. They killed him. I mean, they killed him like they killed MLK, they killed RFK, they killed JFK. They killed all 4 of them in the 60s. There's a reason why for each one. Malcolm X. The funny thing is that they don't really talk about him too much. They talk about civil rights. They talk about MLK. They talk about and that we got to be peaceful in every protest that we do. We got to be nonviolent, but they don't talk about MLK.
Yeah, nonviolent's a bunch of bullshit because nonviolent went out the window when Israel had to be nonviolent. And guess what? They're a hero nation, but everybody else got to be nonviolent. Yeah, fuck that. Nonviolent means you're a slave and you keep on picking cotton.
Well, Malcolm X, he talked more radical. He didn't play with them nonviolent bullshit. But he also, there was a lot. But even when we do get anything about Malcolm X in like our TVs or in the school system, it's just a watered down version of Malcolm X. We really don't see some of it more. That's
right, and you don't see both sides of it. You either see him portrayed as a scumbag or you see him portrayed as a hero. You don't actually see like a combination of the two. You don't see the actual man for who he was. And I'll tell you what, the Malcolm X movie is a travesty. Watch like 3 or 4 of his interviews, and that's way better than any kind of movie that they ever made about him.
Well, they did what? That movie, you talked about the movie with Denzel Washington back in '92 that they did?
Yeah, I don't remember what year it was, but yeah.
Yeah, that of course Hollywood.
I would also say avoid anything from Spike Lee except for Do the Right Thing, just because that movie was an interesting eye on an inner city of that time. Very slanted and very biased, but an interesting eye. But all the rest of Spike Lee stuff is garbage.
Hey everybody, we're actually in the last minute of the show right now. Thanks, Mike. Michael, for coming on.
Chris, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun having a good conversation with you. And by the way, next week's the last show of 2016, so definitely check that out. I'll be on the air Christmas night at 9 o'clock Eastern time. So definitely tune in for that. Thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. Also, Thanks all our people.
The point of no return and nobody can stop it. Malcolm Little when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple, Al-Aqsa. The name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds him. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return. And if I back down now, then